Hello, thanks for joining me. I'm Kumi Taguchi. When you think about a property portfolio, what comes to mind? A house here, an apartment there? For Alexandra Seddon, it's all about creating sanctuary for people and animals and preserving land. In the 1970s, she created a community of like-minded people. And since then, she's continued to buy property where native animals are under threat. Her story is truly inspiring and an example of how one person really can make a difference.
And you're beautiful.
My name is Alexandra Seddon, and conservation, education and community are my total focus. In the Bega Valley, those things have taken up my whole life. I chose not to have children because I felt there were plenty of people in the world. Possibly underneath that was the fact that I didn't think childhood was a happy time at all, but I feel really happy that I have enough space to support people because there are plenty of people who need a lot of support. I have all my life been aware of the horror underneath, the amount of pain in the world, and the horror underneath is something that I sink into very easily. If I don't go on doing something positive, something that does help, I will just sink into the horror. I was born in London while bombs were falling. We came to Australia when I was 2, and it was an incredibly strict upbringing. My father truly believed that he should discipline us because he had been in the army, and he felt that he was doing the best thing by bringing us up very strictly and educating us all the time. Pete and I were brought up in silence, and my sister Camilla, and we all took to it in different ways. Camilla became a writer. Pete became completely silent, and I'm not quite sure what happened to me. But I certainly always wanted community. I married Nicholas when I was 22, and when we were in Oxford, really Nicholas and I did formulate all sorts of ideas. That we had friends who were doctors, friends who were bulldozer drivers, whoever, who could all come together and be a community. So Pete, my brother, really wanted to have his own land because he'd always worked on other people's land. So Pete wanted us to do it all together, so we did. All 3 of us bought a cow's nest. We came down in 1975, January, to look for land, and I looked at the mountains, and Nicholas looked at the river, and Pete looked at the pasture, and we all said yes. And for me, to have that amount of land, which was actually 820 acres, to have that amount of land means that it needs to be shared. My whole idea about Cow's Nest was that people shouldn't need to have money to come and be on the land if they were willing to contribute their labour. And I always had been fascinated by the concept of to each according to his need, from each according to his ability, which was the basis of the kibbutzim as well as communism, and that was the original idea of Cow's Nest as well.
Cow's Nest is a really important place 30, 40 years ago when it was established. It was one of the first community farms. It brought a lot of people into the region, people like myself who are still here.
Wow, it's great, the machinery shed. Yeah. Oh, machinery shed. Hi there, people in the preserving room.
I learnt building skills and cow milking skills and gardening and fencing.
You see it from the little road, so as
Pressing the sheet of paper I just made.
You could go and scrape the cream off the milk from the day before and go and pluck strawberries from the garden, and you know, in some ways, sometimes I think we felt we lived like kings on this fantastic farm.
I had the feeling that if we just had 3 rules: clean up after yourself, put away tools and equipment, and take responsibility for any task you take on. That would mean that an ardent Christian or an atheist, gay person could all live together. And it did mean that, because those 3 rules are incredibly simple, but they imply respect for other humans.
There was quite a few of this sort of thing happening at that time. The heyday would have been the 70s up until the 80s. And what has happened since then is the bureaucracies have made it very, very difficult for people to start up farms like what we tried to do.
And then it had a definite trough where capitalism came in to a big extent, and more people thought, oh, I've got my nice little house, I'm going to keep my nice little house. It's just like it would be in the suburbs, except I don't have to own it or own anything, and get the best of everything. And people get like that, it's a natural tendency.
Could somebody loan me some money? Does anyone have any ideas how I could make some money? Do you have an idea down there? Well, you know, one of these days, you know, you'll when you lay enough golden eggs, I'll treat you a little bit better. But in the meantime, I want you to go and think about how to make more golden eggs.
What comes out of all that, and what has happened once or twice at Cow's Nest with the capitalist sort of people, is that, okay, you trust, and people come in, and thousands of people do wonderful things, and then occasionally, I could count on one hand probably the number of people who let you down and who take advantage of your trust, but it's worth it every time to trust, because such amazing things come out of that. And the whole thing is blossoming again. So we've been going out every community day and supporting the people who've been there throughout all that and who are still wanting it to blossom again.
Oh dear, I sound like a chook.
And hopefully now it'll attract more people and we'll get back to what it was in the 80s. And that's our dream.
Well, Cow's Nest is it's a sanctuary, and it's made me feel really safe. And what Alexandra has taught us, we're teaching our children, you know, being self-sufficient, caring, loving, gentle, all that kind of stuff. And this is what you've done for, I reckon, thousands of people that you've crossed paths with. Just a loving touch or just the caring words, you've changed so many people's lives.
Come on, cows. Come on, darlings. In you come. In you come.
I lived altogether 21 years on Cow's Nest.
Come on then. Let's go. Let's go. Come on, sweeties.
And then I started to be a wildlife carer as well as a farmer in the last few years at Cow's Nest, and set up feral animal proof 57-acre area, which could be a halfway house for injured and orphaned native animals. Became so intense, my care of native animals, that eating and sleeping were my luxuries. From dusk till dawn and further on from that, looking after native animals. I've always thought that the Wildlife Conservancy in America got it right, and then when the Australian Wildlife Conservancy started here, that was unbelievable. They still are doing extraordinary things, acquiring vast tracts of land and bringing them back to a condition where native animals can thrive. So Panbula began because my friend Olwyn Broder once said to me, "Oh no, the wetlands are getting smaller and smaller at Panbula as the waterbirds are shunted along by, first of all, the motel filling in the wetlands, and then the furniture store filling in the wetlands, and now they've got this little bit left, and now this little bit is for sale." And she said, "I want to buy it for the waterbirds, and so I'm going to take out Tatslotto." So I thought to myself, okay, we have to do something. So then I realised because my father had just died, there might be something that would enable me to buy that 15 acres. And I got onto the stockbroker and I asked him, how much is there that I will inherit? And he gave me a speech and he said, when we're young, we like to buy fast cars and spend lots of money. And when we get older, we like to have a portfolio of shares. So I said, no, I just want to buy a swamp. So I don't think he was particularly impressed, but anyway, he said there was 56,000, I think it was, I had inherited from my father, and so I was able to buy the waterbird sanctuary, and then from then on, little bits have been added on.
Panbula, the 82 hectares of floodplain wetland, wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Alexandra. We've recorded more than 160 species of birds here. We have a few species that are protected by international migratory bird agreements. It's an important refuge for birds. We hope that it provides inspiration for other community groups and communities as to what can be done to protect and restore the natural environment.
It's so inspiring that a horse paddock can turn into such a sanctuary in the middle of Panbula, so beautiful. It's not a paddock. It's not a paddock anymore. So we're standing at Tip's Billabong, named after my mother, and her name was Baroness Marjorie Elizabeth Mary Airth Gravenitz, but no one ever called her anything but Tip. All her life she was called Tip. My mother loved what I was doing with native animals, and she used to say, "Oh, you know, you're doing so much more than I did." And I would say to her, "But, you know, you would have done that if you could have." My mother was, I think, incredibly soft inside, but she couldn't let any of that show because she had to be at all times completely dignified and completely respectable. And maybe that's because the family, when they left Russia, had nothing but their pride. My great-grandmother was Baroness Marie von Gravenitz, and her job was to be lady-in-waiting to Marie Dagmar, the mother of the Tsar, Nicholas. And she lived at Kostilitsi, which is near St. Petersburg, and it was a castle. Marie's attitude was, because she was given so much, it behoved her to share it. And that is how I feel. A lot of my life I haven't had anything, and I know how to live on nothing, and we have lived very cheaply just out of what we produced out of the gardens. But then I became very lucky after my mother died in 2000, and having been given all that, I feel it behoves me to use it in the best possible way. And that, for me, has been community conservation and education. In 2006, someone said to me, Pottery Palace is for sale, all the animals are dying, we have to do something. And although I thought I have got plenty of things on my plate already, I thought, I can't say no because all the animals are dying. My mother had only just died, and I behaved exactly the way I did when my father died. It sounds quite indecent, really. I rang up the person handling the will and I buy it. Then we formed a company which didn't have shares. It's called Company Limited by Guarantee, which is what a charity can be. And I gave Pottery Palace to the company, and we got approval on the environmental register for tax deductibility status. So now it is a charity, it belongs to no one, it can't be bought or sold. Cow's Nest can't be bought or sold. It's a charity. The land is in the Pottery Fund, which is our public fund, which all charities have to have. So they can administer their own selves without fear that the land's going to be sold from under them.
Yeah.
And just what's happening now with Pottery Palace, how it's growing in the eyes of even the zoo community now, who definitely disapproved of us to start off with. We're even in the scientific community, we're even growing. And so it's okay now, I feel good about it.
Pottery Palace is really important. A lot of people who live in Australia may not have actually encountered a native animal. And we're asking people like that to appreciate native animals and also national parks. And yet the distance between people and the animals that we're asking to care about is growing. It's a very rare event now to actually be able to cuddle a native animal or to touch it or have it explained to you by someone who cares exactly how important it is.
Where are you, darling? Where are you? Chuffy, woofy, woofy. Chuffy, woofy, woof. Hello, Chuff. Hello, Chuff. Oh, very beautiful red eye. That is what chuffs do when they're performing.
Would you like to show your little face, darling? So sweet. So sweet.
I think it's a life-changing place in the sense that any child who visits there will take that memory to the future. So Alexandra's legacy will live beyond her.
Where's my Olivia? Oh, there you are, darling. Where's your head, sweetie pie? Oh, there you are. Hello, hello. There's Olivia. There's my beautiful one. Hello, darling. Hello, hello, hello. Shall we go out for a little walk? Shall we? Shall we go out for a little walk? We shall. We shall. We shall. Beautiful one. Good girl. It's all right. Good girl. Good girl. You're very sweet. There, she's off. She'll be right now. Here we go. No, not through the hinge. This way. Come on. Come on, sweetie. That's right. Pottery Palace has attracted a lot of people who are absolutely devoted to animals of all sorts. I find it endlessly exciting just to see people who come there a little bit, well, or very, very damaged by things like murders and suicides and appalling abuse and stuff, and come there to be with the animals and who feel a lot more complete in themselves and flourish.
Well, what's she got to eat?
That tongue is awesome. That tongue is actually 1/3 of her total body length. So yeah, it's an amazing tongue. Alexandra has allowed each and every person that works here to grow and develop at their own pace and learn at their own pace. Not too many people get to be nurtured along and encouraged in their workplace in an area that is a passion of theirs as well, and I've been fortunate to be one of those very lucky people.
The next thing along would be where we are now, which is Batty Towers, which used to be called Foxhome. And what happened here is that we used to do flying fox counts on the same 2 nights every season, and we'd come here and just count them on the fly out to count how many. And then I saw for sale notices going up all over the place, and I thought, oh no. So I asked whether I could have some money forwarded so I could buy 2 blocks here, and my idea was that if it was going to have houses along this road, then there could be people who would be the custodians who would live in those houses and guard that incredible deep gully down there where the flying foxes were camped. And so I did buy 2 blocks, one of 12 acres and one of 10 acres, and quickly put voluntary conservation agreements on them so that they couldn't be harmed.
Batty Towers is one of the main roost sites down here on the far south coast. Grey-headed flying foxes are listed as vulnerable. So many places are disappearing for these bats as a habitat, and without these core areas they won't survive. So that's why they're listed as vulnerable, and this is why this roost site is so integral to their long-term survival in New South Wales.
Their numbers have crashed because of us taking all their habitat and people being allowed to shoot them. In the last 3 years we've been able to take them to Potteroo Palace and establish them there, and so the ones who can't be released are part of the sanctuary now, part of the zoo, and people can talk to them, and they love to be talked to, and they're quite responsive. And they're drama queens, so they're saying, I've never seen a human being in my life, and how terrifying this is, but it'll take us about 2 seconds of being with them and they'll want to talk to us. This is Powerful, and Powerful's a little bit sideways because he had a stroke. And this is Tarry, and Tarry was so badly dehydrated that I thought he had brain damage for a year. It's all right, darling. And this is Cooper. Cooper was caught in barbed wire and he tried to chew his wing off the barbed wire and he damaged his mouth. Sparky's called Sparky because he was electrocuted, and Flossie lost a lot of her wing from the loose netting that people put over fruit trees. Oh, so beautiful. In the last 10-15 years their numbers have gone down to 1/3 of what they were. And we need them so much because the eucalypts put out their best pollen at night for the flying foxes. The flying foxes are the pollinators of the eucalypts, more than the honey eaters, more than the bees. And they've adapted really well to humans, but humans are not adapting very well to them at all. The way that Potteroo Palace survives, and thus Cow's Nest survives, because we're both together now, is by having tax deductibility for donations. It could be a really wonderful association as long as this tax deductible status thing continues. Otherwise, I don't think we have a hope.
We wouldn't be able to survive because Alexandra's donations make it possible for her to give quite a lot of money to Potteroo and Cow's Nest now, and that's the only reason that they survive. Only 1% of all the money given by Australians in philanthropy goes to conservation movements. 36% goes to churches. Medical research is 20%, but only 1% of the money given by Australian people goes towards looking after the most basic thing that we've got, the earth, which is pretty sad.
We have this wonderful example of Maria's trustees who took her instructions of keeping the family together, and they set up foundations to finance things, and they have advised us that that's what we should do. So I would like to set up with Nico a foundation which could finance Potteroo after my death. So this is our next enormous step.
She shows that one person can make a difference, and it gives, I think, everyone hope that they can contribute to changing their world. And she's a tremendous illustration of that famous Gandhi's saying, you know, that you must be the change that you wish to see in the world.
Well, to me it just seems like common sense, what I do. Really, all I'm doing is doing what's sensible. And I just expect other people to do it as well.
Next time on Compass.
In June 2014, a story broke which rocked the world.
Grave for 800
dead babies and children
who died while in the care of church-run mother and baby.
These old cesspits were transformed into vaults to bury the babies, which were dying in their hundreds, really.
When I came to my new home, I blocked out all that out of my mind.
The Tuam babies, next time on Compass.